what happened to the good old days when you could just win the offseason without the fanfare, do it in private, undetected. You see now Marvin Harrison Jr. in the muscle mass, #gains, now has made the NFL's Twitter account after what Kyler Murray said about Marvin Harrison Jr.
Well, I will say the NFL was posting about Harrison's gains when he talked to the media like 2 weeks. They're just resurfacing everything now that the quarterback was asked about it.
It's sort of in the newsroom, and I spent 20 plus years in a newsroom. If it bleeds, it leads. If there's good video, well, there's good video now, especially after media day, because there he is, Marvin Harrison Jr., and he's flexing. By the way, ask me for my flexing story a little bit later on this edition of Cardinals Underground. Paulie Podcast, Darren Urban, Dani Sureck. And Marvin Harrison Jr., has he given his weight yet? Has there been now that we're at minicamp, do we have a new and improved, a new and revised weight? Speaking of gains, no?
Did I hear right? Paul's going to flex later? Is that what's happening?
Story about flexing.
We can't forget to ask about that.
An anecdote about flexing.
Nothing new on the weight yet.
I'm still mentally traumatized by said story. We'll get to that a little bit later. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is trying to go about his business. I'll give you an example. And there's Kelvin Beachum. Did you happen to hear he was on Arizona Sports earlier today? And he was of course, Wolf asked him about his weight, And then after that, they started talking about play along the line of scrimmage. And Kelvin Beachum, the game's still won in the trenches, right? And then he sort of went into this little soliloquy about, we can talk about the speed of Kyler Murray. We can talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. posing with all his muscles. So now Marv is just getting worked into just different examples from the vets. Okay? So it's interesting how this is working over here. But did he do any push-ups or anything before the media day shoot, Darren? You were over there on the inside.
He did not do any push-ups. He was just, being Marv.
He didn't get a good pump in or anything before the shoot?
Not that I know of. Okay. Not anywhere that I saw. Now, I'm in the bubble, and he came from the locker room, and goodness knows what's going on over there, Paul.
How was the media day? Give me some takeaways. Behind the scenes, there's going to be all-access footage, I'm sure, coming out.
It was first of all, it's content day now, Paul. It's no longer
content day.
Media day.
Really?
Get it together.
My apologies.
Because there's actually
what's the stinking difference between
there's
media
no
day and
media
content?
there.
Not talking to local media.
But it's for media. I'm not talking media as in attendees or those covering, but what you're generating is media, multimedia, is it not?
Content.
Okay.
That is not getting
we're not going to argue
a light on the lamp, which thankfully Paul remembered this week.
Yeah, we're not.
We're happy about that.
There. Wow, that was a passive-aggressive shot over there.
I tried to get in earlier, but you didn't give me much room to get it out there.
Mm-hmm. Are we like crabs in a bucket? Did you hear what Dalvin Tomlinson said?
I'm sure glad you said about the bucket part. But, I mean...
That was a good... He said, by the way, he called his shot. He said there's going to be many more Southern colloquialisms. As I butcher the word? I mean, something like that.
I did enjoy that. I did understand it when he said it at the time. There was some other people that seemed to not fully understand what he was saying.
Everyone's crawling over each other trying to get out of the bucket. Yeah. That's what the D-line room. All of a sudden, it's so deep.
But he's saying it wasn't. That isn't what's happening.
It wasn't, yeah. He said everyone thinks it's like crabs in a bucket. Every crab for themselves trying to get out of the bucket. He said that's not the case. But how can you not be out at mandatory minicamp? At least maybe this is my takeaway. So here we go. I'll see if this lights the lamp or not. You see Calais Campbell standing next to Walter Nolen III. Just call him Walt at this point. And there's Darius Robinson. So you got a round 1 pick in 2025, a round 1 pick in 2024, and a round 2 pick in 2008. I mean, it's pretty remarkable to see those three guys standing next to each other as teammates.
I feel like in some ways they're trying to make us feel better, Paul, given that our draft class was well before 2008.
Well, you know what? They're doing a good job. For that, they do earn a quick lighting of the lamp.
As long as they can play. I mean, I think the biggest thing when you talk about that stuff is I like the experience. I like being able to balance the young and the old. But the key to, especially somebody like Calais, is, he's a little long in the tooth, but he was still playing at a high level last year when he was playing. He's made it clear that, hey, I can't be playing much more than 30 or 35 snaps a game, but if that's what I'm playing, I'm going to dominate. That's the important part. This isn't about bringing people in that just have name recognition that aren't really going to help much.
That's the key. Is General Manager Monty Alcifor would not have brought Calais Campbell back just because he is Calais Campbell. Where the Cardinals are at right now, of how they have been transitioning the last couple of years and getting competitive, you're not going to use a roster spot. You're not going to put money towards somebody that you don't want out there on the field that can make an impact, especially when this is a front office that doesn't have ties to Campbell from his first roundabout here. Now, it does make it all the more exciting, a player that was that beloved for what he was doing on the field and off the field to come back, still be going into year 18, making the sort of impact that Campbell has been the last couple of years. It works nicely together. I can't imagine this would have been a move had Campbell not physically been able to do what is going to be asked of him on the field.
I want to know, and I was thinking about this the other day. There was a question in the mailbag that made me think about this a little bit. But, obviously Darius Robinson, had he stayed healthy, was going to play a bunch last year. Is Walter Nolen automatically going to play a bunch this year? Or given the depth that they have, is he going to have to – might they slow play him a little bit because he's naturally going to be behind all these veterans who know what they're doing?
Question, is that implying that Robinson was only going to play a lot because of his draft position? Because the way he was looking in camp,
right?
He looked good.
He was earning it, but again,
just the first round pick.
No one's going to argue the fact that they've raised the overall level of the defensive line from last year to this year.
So, how many defensive linemen do you have ahead of Walt right now?
Ahead of him?
Ahead of him.
How can you say anyone isn't, given experience? Would be my counter argument is just because you were. I know, but still.
You've been proving a lot with no pads on a defensive
He's
lineman?
had, 6 practices under his belt?
Let me use last year as an analogy. By the time you got to the end of camp, how many D linemen were ahead of Darius Robinson before the injury?
But
we're not
camp.
at the end
He's
of camp.
had 6 practices. He hasn't even had a padded practice yet.
I thought we were talking by the time the season starts. You're talking right here, right now?
Well, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen in camp. You think you know what's going to happen, but you don't know.
No, that is my projection. That is my point. That by the end of camp, how many guys are going to be ahead of Walter Nolen III?
The argument would still be possibly if you had Dalvin Tomlinson, you had Darius Robinson, Dante Stills has looked good, you have LJ Collier, what do they have in Justin Jones? It's more than 1 or 2 names of what I would put ahead of Nolen right now.
You're saying Darius Robinson didn't have Darius Robinson ahead of him. He didn't have Dalvin Tomlinson on the team. He didn't have Calais Campbell on the team. Now, he had some of those other guys, but those other guys, I mean, I'm assuming Dante Stills
LJ Collier was coming off a year where he had played 1 game.
I mean, again, I'm not sitting here saying Walter Nolen won't start going into the season or something, but I'm looking at your facial expression, which we can't see if you're just listening to the audio. But Paul's facial expression is saying, "Are you a stupid idiot?" Of course, he's going to be the best defensive lineman they have by the time we get started.
I'm not saying the best defensive lineman, but I will say that if not for the injury, I was forecasting Darius Robinson a starter last year with Justin Jones, and so I'm not. I'm just saying I put Walter Nolen III on the same plane as anyone else in that room. I don't think he's markedly behind just because he's a first-year guy. Now, is Dalvin Tomlinson going to be a better zero technique, nose tackle? Of course he is. I do think Dalvin Tomlinson is probably your one surefire starter. And then who's flanking him on either side? That is the question.
The difference of Robinson last year and Nolen this year is the rest of the room. Is last year the competition of Dante Stills was going into year 2 and made a jump, now is going into year 3. LJ Collier last year was coming off a season where he had played 1 game before having a season-ending injury. He now has more comfortability here, and the Cardinals felt strongly about bringing him back. The difference is the other pieces in that defensive line room, it's a higher caliber of talent that Nolen is going to have to work his way through the depth chart. That's not to say that's not possible given the talent.
Don't worry, we're going to get to the underground on September 3rd or whatever that Tuesday is, and Paul's going to be doing his happy dance and throwing it in our face that Walter Nolen is
I can't even believe we've gone this long in the offseason without hearing about the 10 players Paul is predicting to make the roster.
No, the good news for you,
right?
You
the
guys
10 players he's keeping his eye on.
Unless I'm reminded of it
next week,
I will not remember. So that's the good news for you guys.
The only list
don't worry
you
about
like.
that. It's by the way, Dalvin Tomlinson did cite right away Walter Nolen's quickness in meeting the media.
Yes.
That was the first thing he said.
I don't doubt it.
So, and he also said quote, "This scheme reminds me a lot of Alabama." And he drew a comparison when it comes to energy between Nick Saban and Jonathan Gannon, and how he cares about the players and wants to get the most out of every single player. And when you do that, it elevates the entire program. Someone then asked him about Saban's temper versus JG, and he said, no one's in the same class as Nick Saban when it comes to temper. But I'm not sure what he means by this scheme reminds me a lot of Alabama. Note to self, conducting a little I-team investigation into what exactly he means by that. We'll have to investigate that a little bit. By the way, when Jonathan Gannon...
Alabama didn't make the playoffs this year, right? I'm assuming these older Alabama teams.
No, I thought you were going to stir it up or,
Not me.
Go ahead, rub it into the SEC diehards over there. Yeah, that was quite a thing. I wasn't there. Jonathan Gannon met the media, and there were some questions about Kyler Murray. And I don't know, it could have been you, Darren. Someone asked him, all right, where has he improved since the end of last season to now? And he gave a quick quote, and I'm going to say before I read this quote, do not dismiss this answer from Jonathan Gannon as just coach speak or a quick, aside. When he said about Kyler Murray, you can always increase your command of the offense. You can always increase your command of the team. Aren't those the first two areas that Kyler Murray needs to improve as a quarterback? His command of the offense. And when you say command of the offense, what are you seeing from the defense? Where to go with the ball? When? How can you get through your reads and your progressions? And then the second part of that, your command of the team. Leadership as a team captain and a franchise quarterback. So I thought that was interesting a little bit. Maybe it's early June and I'm still reading a little too much into that, but I thought that was interesting. And then for his part, Kyler Murray had a press conference, and he had some substantive things to say. How about getting out into space? This continued storyline here recently in the offseason about unscheduled plays, getting out of the pocket, making defenses pay for flushing them out, and the level of emphasis they're putting into it right now. And talking about how him and Drew have said, yeah, you know what, these scramble drills, we have to be better, in the words of Kyler Murray, yet I have the ability to do it on the level of a Josh Allen, of a Lamar Jackson. So I thought that's interesting. Do you think that is going to translate into a different look for the offense this year? Do you think that will truly be organic? Or do you think by design we're going to see a lot more of that? Because there's been a lot of talk about that. A lot. And Kyler's brought it up himself at times.
My hesitancy to saying yes is this was a discussion last offseason. I don't necessarily think that means it won't be the case. I think it should just become very clear with changing of the guard the last couple of years. We're not going to see a lot of designed runs for Murray. It's going to be an option for him, and when that's there is making sure he's prepared. That's what I've gathered from hearing from the quarterback and offensive coordinator Drew Petzing recently, is practicing these off-schedule plays, so when those moments arise in a game, the quarterback, the offensive line who's blocking, your receivers who are running routes, everybody is on the same page in terms of timing and where you need to be so that you're not running around like a chicken with your head cut off. I would be surprised if we see a significant jump in designed quarterback run plays just because we haven't seen that in the last couple of years. It doesn't really seem like that's what's going to fit this style of offense, especially when you've got such strong running backs in James Conner and Trey Benson. We'll see. I do think it's interesting. I think it's important that that has become an emphasis in practice, is so that there is no scenario in which anybody feels like they were not prepared for something in a game.
And I'm not predicting more QB power like the old Cam Newton. I'm not saying that's coming. But I will say, like, if you look at Kyle Shanahan's offense, I'm always amazed at how often they get Brock Purdy on the move, a lot of the rolls and so forth.
That's now, Kyle Shanahan, though, too.
It is. But when you're studying other offenses and other schemes and you're looking for other facets and stuff you can put into your own scheme, for example, Kyler mentioned more motion, or he's asked about more motion, what Trey McBride talked about, a little extra sauce in it, and he immediately extolled the virtues of more motion if you're doing it well. Gives you more reads, gives you more tells in a defense. It can make a lot tougher for defenders to get leverage and, give a little more separation right off the line of scrimmage. So it has piqued my curiosity a little bit. Okay, how much more motion is more motion, and what is that going to look like? And then are you also going to get the quarterback on the move, not just receivers and tight ends on the move, but the quarterback on the move a little bit more? And so what is the potential now in year 3 where you largely returned intact most of your offensive weapons? So they have a good comprehension of this offense. You're not risking mental error, especially with a rookie receiver or second-year receivers. No, everyone should have the playbook down at this point. So now, okay, guess what? We're going to elevate the scheme itself.
The thing that always first of all, I'm going to kind of with Dan. I'm going to withhold judgment until I see it a little bit more. It's easy to talk about right now, and then when you want to put it in play against whoever you're putting it in play with, are you comfortable enough doing that? I'm always hesitant. I'm not completely hesitant, but I think you need to pick and choose the getting the quarterback on the move and the rollout thing and the play action. You can't do it all the time because you're essentially cutting down half the field, and even that becomes predictable if you do it enough. Mm-hmm. And I think you need to be careful. I think it can be done. I think it's important. Honestly, when we hear them talking about the off-schedule plays and Kyler in space and moving around. I would like to see them hit more of those, which I don't know how much you can practice. But do I want to see them put Kyler on the move more often? Sure, but I don't think it's the panacea to fix everything. Because again, you're cutting down the field. I don't particularly want to see Kyler throwing back across his body if one or two of the receivers, when you're doing a rollout right, isn't there. Then all of a sudden, okay, what are we doing? And I don't know how comfortable he's going to be trying to run out of that when all the defenders are flowing that way in the first place. That's just me.
Well, and Kyler did mention to the media that one of the big adjustments he made come from the college game to the NFL, and to this day, is that until the NFL, he always felt like he was always in space. His athleticism was so elite, he could always create space for himself. But, the great athletes in the NFL on the defensive side, even the defensive front, guys can run you down from behind, the angles, the IQ out there, so you don't have nearly as much space. And then to your point, Darren, it is tough to practice, obviously. It's like trying to practice contested catches.
The off-schedule stuff.
The off-schedule stuff. And, in fact, Drew Petzing was on with Arizona Sports to start mandatory minicamp, and he's used this analogy before that he likens it to fast break basketball. You sort of have to play the game. It has to be organic. It's hard to actually replicate in practice, but he did say one of the determinations based on last year was they left too many plays out there late in the down. That was the verbiage he used, late in the down, meaning play might break down, Kyler might extend the play, and they didn't hit often enough. They didn't make a defense pay. The best example all year was week 2, Marvin Harrison Jr.'s second touchdown, where he ran to the open space, Kyler hit him on the run, and then he took it from there, 60-yard strike. And at that point, you're thinking, okay, even Kyler made this point, we rarely saw that type of chunk play the rest of the year.
Well, there was, what game was it now? I can imagine it at home where Murray rolled right and threw across his body across the field and found Trey McBride by himself on the left side of the field for 30 or 40 yards. It's been done.
See, again, the problem, and I agree with Petzing. Petzing had said the same thing last week when he did his press conference, and it's the thing to me is every second that ticks by on a broken play is a second that gives the offense an advantage. The fact that you're buying time and you still can't convert, that's frustrating. I understand that you're got the quarterback on the run, and that makes it harder. I get all that, and there's chances he's going to be times when he's under pressure and he's running the wrong way, but still, the longer that play is alive, the defense is at a major disadvantage because now you're just scrambling all over the place. And I agree, that should happen more often. And in reality, and I think Petzing said this last week to us, Kyler's one of those guys that should really flourish in something like that, to be honest.
And you know what? This is just an observation based on last year. I don't have the film study to prove it. I didn't go through all the analytics, but it's far from just on Kyler. the receivers have to stay active. You can't give up on the play. You have a quarterback capable of extending a play up to 20 seconds if needed. If you don't believe us, go watch the Raiders, the road game win at the Raiders, where the 2-point conversion lasted like 21 seconds before he housed it with his legs. So you got in that same game against the Rams, Elijah Higgins had that sliding catch in the back of the end zone. What did Kyler do? He made like 5 guys miss.
Yep.
And then so I think a lot of it, honestly, is on the receivers to stay alive, keep running, find open space. And there are certain guys who are really good at that. Trey McBride. We had a show with Rob Fredrickson. Travis Kelce might be the best in the league, finding the open spot in the zone coverage. Zach Ertz was really good for Jaden Daniels a year ago at doing that. So I think that's something, experience obviously helps any receiver, a tight end in that regard. So I thought that was interesting. Drew Petzing also saying about, look, the trend in the NFL isn't just the 2 high safeties and all that and the shell coverage, but a defense is more apt to check more often, just like an offense will check in and out of plays. A defense will check in and out of plays. So there's that cat and mouse game back and forth between the defensive coordinator and the offensive coordinator. So I thought that was all pretty interesting. And then in terms of physicality, because, Wolf is going to ask him about that, he said, look, you don't have to run the ball to be physical. He said, I don't believe that's an absolute. It's really more of an attitude or a mentality of your entire team. James Conner is just as physical catching the ball and running with it as he is handing the ball and running with it.
Absolutely, because Conner will run through a player. He's the bulldozer. He has set the tone for this offense last year, which is why I would imagine that they're not going to stray far from what worked for them offensively with the running game and relying heavily on that.
By the way, Kelvin Beachum had a really good he said the locker room really understands at this point, just in his words, they understand how important this year is in so many different levels. It's year 3. It's a performance-based business. Playoffs are long overdue. And he said we had dinner as a team the night before mandatory minicamp. And he said, let's just say there was a message of it gets to the point where, guess what? This has to occur as a team. No longer can you say we don't have this piece or that piece, or we're missing this. He said there's more than enough to get this team to the postseason. So really interesting to hear 14-year veteran Kelvin Beachum basically bottom line it.
Yeah, you're going to hear players say that every year, to be fair, is you're never going to hear a player get up and say, didn't really put a lot of focus on this position, so it's okay. It'd be understandable if we don't hit the playoffs. But Beachum's right. They kept the consistency, a lot of those star players, essentially the whole starting offense, because they believe in the personnel they have, and they really put an effort into this defense, especially in the front 7, and then in the draft with some of the defensive backs. The time is now. You have put effort into the coaching staff. You've put effort, you've put money, you've put capital into the players. So Beachum's right. The time is now.
I'd say Beach would probably, if you had a power poll, the most well-rounded players / people in the locker room, Beach might be number 1. So in an effort to keep up with the Joneses, if you will, and by the way, there's 6 right now on the Cardinals roster. There are 6 guys with the last name Jones. I think it's time.
Is that more or less than the Purge movies, Paul?
Well, I asked Zay Jones, by the way. He didn't. He kind of gave me a wry smile, and I said, "Are the 5 other Joneses keeping up with Zay Jones?" And he sort of came and gave me the smirk. Funny guy. Okay, smart Alex. So you know what? In other words, he's saying, "Move it along," and that's exactly what we're doing right now. Dani, we'll segue to you.
Getting cultured with Dani. It is not just directed at Paul.
Am I the default uncultured Philistine around here?
Yes.
You got me very excited now.
I am on social media and consume more pop culture than both of you combined.
I think I'm being unfairly profiled, but go ahead.
Let's go. I have been told to not talk about this on Getting Cultured, so I'm at least going to bring it up briefly without going into depth. Love Island is back, Paul.
Okay. You know how I know that?
We are back for another summer.
About an hour ago, I saw there was some content, I think, from the Bears, and two of the younger players were talking about it during. One guy was mic'd up during stretching. Yeah, and they had supposedly had a phenomenal conversation about Love Island. I'm like, nope, and I went right past it.
One of the contestants went to Corona del Sol down the street, Paul.
Yep. Learned that. Darren sent me her yearbook picture. I've actually never watched a full Love Island season live as it's happening.
Wait. I need to clarify something. Darren had the yearbook picture because my son graduated with her, and she asked about it, and I happened to have the yearbook photo that because my son had asked for
That
it.
is
I did not
important
know she was on the
clarification.
show. I did not know this girl.
Yes.
Jesus.
Sorry,
freaking
I
Christ.
left out some important details there. Anyway, I haven't really watched a full season live before. However, last season just took over social media, so I'm giving it a shot. It is a commitment. It is like, it's 6 days a week.
What?
But what's
What?
impressive,
No.
yes. Well, one of the days I don't watch because it's like a round table of people, but 5 days, new episodes. But what people love about it is how fast of a turnaround it is. So Tuesday night's episode, we're going to be seeing stuff from Monday. That's what people love about Love Island. And I don't know how big of an island Fiji is, but I do know that the Love Island contestants are on Fiji, and so are their Survivor 50 castaways who are currently filming Survivor 50. Talk about completely different island TV shows to sign up for.
It's the collab you've all been waiting for.
And I thought,
Yes.
The crossover
Love
event.
Island and Survivor.
I thought NFL Films Hard Knocks was good at turning around shows, but that's pretty elite right there. But, all that, it sounds like a lot of work to keep up with
Yes.
everything you're keeping up with.
Well, instead of you having to watch, I could just give you a breakdown every week on Getting Cultured.
Yeah, I prefer that, actually.
Okay,
yes.
great. You guys know I don't love talking about him, but we have to. He left me no choice. Aaron Rodgers, new Steelers quarterback officially, is married. So mazel tov to Aaron Rodgers. He was spotted wearing a wedding ring in photos signing his contract and at practice at minicamp this week in Pittsburgh. He confirmed that he got married a couple of months ago in his presser, and then upon some research I conducted, back in December of 2024 when Rodgers was on a Pat McAfee show, he had dropped that he was in a relationship with a woman named Brittany, so presumably it's the same woman. So Aaron Rodgers is married. And that's that. You've got cultured, so you're welcome.
Really? Okay.
Love Island and Aaron Rodgers, Paul.
I'm going to miss
What
the
more
days.
could you ask for?
I have some really good friends, long-term friends who cover the Packers, and definitely when Aaron Rodgers was there. And when he was dating, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, the actress's name.
Shailene.
No, the one before that. Olivia Munn. Thank you, Omo. And she showed up to a couple of games, and there was a couple times where some things were written, and Olivia Munn did not take too kindly to it. And the stories that my buddies have between getting into it with Olivia Munn are quite enjoyable.
Okay. And then there's Arizona resident, at least former Scottsdale resident, Danica Patrick. So, all right, he finally
true.
settled down and tied the knot. Okay.
He sure did.
Just like he finally showed up to Steelers camp.
Well, maybe he was honeymooning. Maybe that's why he couldn't
Maybe.
In a
sign his
cave?
contract.
Yeah.
It's possible.
The wedding cake was made of bark.
Can I say this, though? The reason he showed up finally for mandatory minicamp, because if he didn't, he would seriously risk losing the entire team before he even showed up.
This is true.
Does he care about that?
Right? I mean, and honestly, we've seen this with a pair of quarterbacks, Cardinals quarterbacks in the past, both drafted number 10 overall. You can't lead if no one's following. And you risk losing all your followers, meaning the rest of the locker room, if you don't at least show up for mandatory minicamp, because then everyone else is busting their tail and making the commitment and saying, wait a minute, where's our franchise QB?
It's pretty deep. You can't lead if nobody's following.
Yeah. And so we'll see how many followers. Is Cam Hayward on board yet with Aaron Rodgers?
How about Terry Bradshaw?
Not Terry Bradshaw.
So if he's a new
No.
teammate, do you still send him a wedding gift,
No.
do you think?
So,
No.
No.
He got married a couple months ago, didn't you say?
Yes.
Yeah. So, no.
Time has passed. Okay.
Time has passed.
by the way, should we? I don't want to usurp winning behavior, but do you want to go with the Myles Garrett soundbite right here? Since
We
we're
can do that.
talking
We can
about,
talk. We can talk about Aaron Rodgers and
Okay.
kind of fold it all together. Sure.
because you talk about winning the offseason. Marv, you're number 2 in the power poll when it comes to the big arms, right? Big arms. Do you see Myles Garrett going sleeveless with the media? And then he was asked by one of the local media members, geez, Myles, what do you think about Aaron Rodgers coming to the division?
What do I think about it? I think it's a good opportunity to put him in the graveyard.
Okay.
First of all, that graveyard, the all I can think of is that tiny headstone for Kyler.
Which that is good recall. You're right. And
The tiny headstone for
yeah,
Kyler. And
yeah.
as a quick recall, like Myles Garrett for at least one Halloween did in his front yard had like a graveyard
Yes.
for all these quarterbacks he'd sacked. He had like an extra tiny gravestone for Kyler. Now, to be fair, they were one-time college teammates at Texas
Yes.
A&M, and Kyler
He's messing with him.
Kyler gave
Yep.
him crap for
Yep.
doing it, and Myles Garrett laughed. And
By the way, Kyler says he is not scared of Calais Campbell, just for the record. He said that with sort of a
what did he
smile
say?
on
How
his
big
face.
did he say Calais was? What was the word he used?
Gargantuous?
Gargantuous. No.
Gargantuous? Is that? I didn't
Yeah.
quite catch that. Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, there's two facets to that soundbite. There's an actual quote, which looks great in print, but then there's the guy sneezing right in the middle. So
When I
when
think about it, I think it's a good opportunity to put him in the graveyard.
Look, when you got to sneeze, you got to sneeze.
I have no critique there because what is the guy? what is he going to do if he has to sneeze?
You
He can't do
realize your
anything
head could
about
blow
that.
off if you held
Have
it
you,
in.
of all the times you've been on camera, has that never been a fear of yours that you're going to have to sneeze or cough? Because it has absolutely been an intrusive thought of mine.
You know, it is amazing. All the airtime over all
I
the
just
years.
jinxed you.
Knock on wood. I don't think.
There's no such thing as jinxes.
I did work with a guy in morning radio who was prone to sneezing quite a bit live on the
Can't
air.
do anything
I don't, you know,
about
He was
it.
allergic to
I
Calvisi.
don't know. Well,
It makes you human.
he was sitting next to Wolf. I was in an adjacent booth, thank goodness. So I don't know. That's a good question.
He calls it an adjacent booth, but we just like to call it the clean room,
That's right.
which is why Paulie was in there.
Oh my gosh.
Last week on the podcast, I was in the middle of a point, and I was like, "Oh my God, I have to cough so bad." And I think if you go back and listen, and my voice I started losing the timbre in my voice because I'm like, "Yep, I got to cough."
Well, Dave Pasch tells a famous story. In fact, it was in the Cardinals press box. At halftime, Dave was eating popcorn, and Marv Albert, this is way back in the day, Marv Albert was like, "Dave, what are you doing? Thou shalt not eat anything of a kernel or peanuts or anything that is, is prone to getting lodged in your throat at some point after halftime." But, Dave tempts fate all the time. So he lives dangerously with that one right there. By the way, before we move on from Kyler Murray, what'd you make of his comments about Jacoby Brissett, who is not just, shall we say, content to be a backup?
Did Jacoby Brissett ever play with Joe Flacco?
Did they together?
I don't know. But that's what I thought of, is what we were talking about with Joe Flacco last week.
Oh, yeah, the comments there. Yeah, okay.
So-
Yes and no. Yeah, it wasn't the same question
No.
of if Murray is going to mentor in some facet Jacoby Brissett. Right.
Other way around. Brissett would mentor Murray.
I get they're just so close in age. Like
Are they?
I think they are pretty close in age.
Jacoby Brissett, well, he's in
Yes.
year 10. So I think he's 32, maybe even 34,
Okay.
to be honest with you.
32.
32, okay.
I'm thinking like a Joe Flacco and
Okay, that's
right.
fair.
It's different, but the question was phrased to Murray about bringing in a veteran, experienced quarterback and what he's been able to pick from Brissett's brain so far. And I liked Murray's answer. It was
No, that was a
saying
good one.
Brissett doesn't show up with the mindset every day that he's competing to be the backup. He's competing to play in the NFL,
Yeah.
right?
But
and it's
Be the starter is what he
right.
said.
And Murray said he respects that.
Yeah, and then Kyler finished, because I'm looking at the quote right now, "You can feel that energy." That was the quote. He's not trying to be a backup. I respect that he's definitely pushed me. He comes to work every day like he's the starter, and you can feel that energy.
By the way, quick question. If Kyler Murray is turning 28 on whatever it is, August 7th or whatever his birthday is, at what point do we like, oh, he needs to have an experienced backup? He needs to have an experienced backup. Isn't he got all the experience? I'm like, at what point are we saying? We never were saying about Kurt Warner, where's his experienced backup?
I don't think anyone ever said he needed one. I think
Oh,
it was.
no, I think people were saying that,
Oh.
especially after Colt left.
Yeah, in his younger days, where's the guy? Yeah, the
I meant, like,
experienced
this
guy to
offseason,
mentor
but
him.
yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. I would love to be 28 and be wondering about.
I would say, though, this is a new dynamic for Kyler Murray. If he views Jacoby Brissett as really pushing him for the starting job, I'm not saying that's happening. But if Kyler Murray views a guy who has started over 50 games in this league, off the top of my head, I think he started 53 games because we just interviewed him last week. I was looking at some of his stats. He started the first 5 games last year, was replaced by Drake May. Now, the Patriots' problems went way beyond Jacoby Brissett. I mean, his protection was horrendous, some of the worst in the league. They probably had the worst weapons in the league. it was awful. They fired the coaching staff. The scheme was abysmal. So he left. But he's been a starting quarterback about half his 10-year career. And if Kyler feels like this guy is pushing me, and I've never felt this before in the NFL, could this be a catalyst to elevate Kyler's game? If we get to the bye week and Kyler's having an MVP season just like he did the first half of 2021, are we all going to look around and go, whoa, maybe it's the Jacoby Brissett effect?
We could. What if the other thing happens?
That Kyler picks up where he left off last year and is throwing a lot of interceptions.
I mean,
and then all of a sudden you have a backup quarterback who has a historically low interception rate. Is that what you're saying, Darren? Is that the thought bubble in your head?
Well, not in my head. It would be above my head, but sure.
Light the lamp.
Right? Is that what?
I mean, I think all of those things.
Competition is good at every position. You don't ever want to have to go to your backup quarterback, but in the chance that you do, you want to make sure it's a backup quarterback who can lessen the drop-off between the starter and the backup. And that's not to say that Brissett, the expectation is for him to go out and play the way that Murray plays and have that similar skill set. No, it's a matter of, can you go out there, can you have command, can you control this offense, can you be accurate and secure the ball and move the chains?
It's going to be... Look, it's going to be a fascinating season. The bottom line is we all know that the spotlight, which is always on Kyler, it feels like it's on there a little hotter right now, and in part because he's going into year 7, and in part because, look, this is going to be the best team they've had since 2021 probably.
Yep, definitely.
So,
well, okay,
like what Beach said, like what are the excuses now?
So you've been a top 5 run team each of the last 2 years, top 2 in yards per carry. Let's say you pick up where you left off in the run game. And Trey Benson, let's just say he really formulates a 1-2 punch. Okay, now the defense is above average, top half of the league. Defensive front is getting after it. You're holding teams under 20 points a game. The defense has been fixed, and at times it's getting you the ball. More interceptions because you have better pass rush. By the way, Starling Thomas told us on the Big Red Rage he can already sense a better pass rush. The secondary already feels that vibe that quarterbacks are going to have less time to throw. Very interesting. So now all of a sudden, wait a minute, why are the Cardinals not winning games or losing close games? If, and I said if, it's because of what happened after the bye last year, untimely interceptions, then guess what? There's no doubt in my mind Jonathan Gannon is going to hold everyone accountable, including the guy playing quarterback, throwing the interceptions.
Why wouldn't he? You should, right? Like, hold those accountable. That's absolutely what should be happening. And ball security was a problem last year. There was not a single game in 2024 in which the ball did not hit the ground or get intercepted. Now, just because the ball was fumbled doesn't mean the Cardinals lost possession. However, they did not go a single game where they didn't log a fumble or an interception. You have to secure the ball. If you're going to have all these weapons on offense, if you're going to have a defense that's going to force teams to go 3 and out and try and keep your quarterback on the field, you can't go 3 and out. You're going to have to keep the ball. You're going to have to keep possession, be safe with it, and put points on the board.
And that's my segue to Trey McBride real quick, because 3 and out, okay, you need another third down target beyond Trey McBride. It's got to happen, at least to me. With Marvin Harrison Jr., how does he elevate? How does he really help out his quarterback in year 2? Forget the stats. Just be a go-to guy on third down. That's where everyone will benefit. That's where this offense gets better. That's where they're going to, move the ball, get into the end zone, control the clock, all the above. There needs to be another third down option beyond 85.
I want to back up and say, so are you, like, obviously you're Marvin would do stuff on other downs, but you're like, as long as he becomes a third down threat, that's good enough?
To me, that's the first priority. It really is. Yeah. That would be the first and foremost thing I'd like to see out of him in year 2. Be a really reliable target on third down.
I don't disagree with that, but I would like to see just up the overall performance of how he does, because to be honest, if he does better on the other downs, maybe you don't have as many third downs.
True. Yeah. Okay.
I see what you're saying. I do. I really do see what you're saying.
And there's no doubt he put on the muscles, I would presume, because he wants to get better at contested catches. He needs to get better at contested catches. And you need to have the ability to be like, get off me, right? And just, there's got to be a little fits in there. Get yourself between the DB and the football.
Is now a good time to bring up your flexing stories? We're talking about
let's
muscles,
do
or
the
should we do
flexing
it later?
Okay.
Or is that winning behavior?
Well, yeah, you know what? That'll be our segue here. Let's just do it. Go ahead. It is mentally traumatizing me still. So
I'm excited.
But first, we have to play the intro.
I see you. Let's go. Can you display winning behavior? You have to consistently display winning behavior.
That's winning behavior.
You got to define what winning behavior is and hold people to that standard.
Yes.
So there I was, Mountainside Fitness. Of course I was, because, I live in the gym and I go in to wash my hands. Ding, right, Dani? You go in to wash your hands
Yes,
after
thank
work.
you.
Of course you do. And I walk in and let's just say there's a guy in
I'm
the
nervous.
in the 18 to 34 demo, closer to 18. And there's PDAs and there's PDFs. I'm not talking about documents. Public display of flexing.
That's illegal and usually in the gyms, right?
He's got a tight tank top on and he's flexing in the mirror, and I'm trying to avoid it. Eyes down, Calvisi. Just go over, wash your hands.
Is he taking selfies as well?
Maybe he won't be there. Maybe when you done washing your hands and you reach for the paper towel. No, he's got his shirt off. Okay, and he's got his shirt off, and now he's really flexing like he's Mr. Universe, except he was anything but Mr. Universe. And what is wrong with the young people these days? What is going on? Can you just not wait till you get home? Shouldn't that be something in the privacy of your own mirror?
What is less winning behavior? Flexing in the mirror and
At a public gym.
Or scrolling your phone while you're at the urinal?
I'm going to tap out of this
that got
conversation.
extremely
I
real.
really don't have a lot to add. I'm going to let the team
Okay.
handle this.
Dani?
Don't come to me for an answer here, Paul. Darren just took us off the rail.
All right, what do we have? What else we got?
What
here?
else do we have here? That's a quick segue. In other news, we have a local news co-anchor, Olivia something, who was doing a 3-hour morning newscast
I totally threw him for a loop.
while in labor. It says here, her water broke and she was still broadcasting. Okay.
The quote is what makes that, though.
It is. Go ahead, read the quote. Do you have it in front of you?
I'm happy to be here, and I'll stay on the desk for as long as I possibly can. But if I disappear, that's what's going on. Now, I would like to bring this up. I was talking to a coworker yesterday.
Is that not the
actually.
ultimate TMI, by the way?
Probably.
Too much info.
And we were talking about something that was happening in my life, and when it was an important life event, what I was talking about, and I was saying, but I'm hoping it doesn't get scheduled when there's a game because I don't want to miss a game. And this person was giving me crap because it's like, if you miss a game for an important life event, whatever. And now, obviously, not everybody does it.
I'm hesitant to mark this as winning behavior because if it really was Olivia's choice and she was fine, that's okay. But this could open up a can of worms to a much larger conversation of
Nobody's
why
making her do that.
I'm just saying of women working up until the very last minute they can and then coming back very shortly after giving birth. It just
doesn't feel right to you?
No. If she's in
How about
labor,
scrolling on
why
a phone
wouldn't
by the
somebody take
urinal?
her off air and say, you know what, you have more important things going on. We will find a way to work around this broadcast.
I find it hard to believe in today's day and age that there would be a boss that said, you have to be doing this.
Darren,
Just more so the feeling
Yeah,
of
okay,
you
yeah.
could be replaced or,
No, I
something
get
along
that.
those lines.
Darren, you've never worked in the trenches of local news.
I have not.
It's
Not on
it's
TV news.
It's cutthroat.
Newspaper.
So in all my years not being qualified to talk about something has never stopped me before until now. I'm not going to comment on that story. I'm just going to move it along to winning behavior. Derrick Henry, if he wins his way to 2,000 rushing yards, he ends up in an Adam Sandler movie. I saw headlines about this. I didn't see quite any details. Really, is that?
I actually thought that Dani might steal this for getting cultured.
I haven't seen this.
Oh, so apparently Derrick Henry was on Dan Patrick and Derrick Henry was apparently talking about how much he loved Adam Sandler and his movies. And Dan Patrick is an Adam Sandler guy. He's been in a handful of his movies.
True.
And apparently Dan Patrick said, I will talk to Adam, and if you get 2,000 yards again, I'll make sure he puts you in a movie. And then I think the next day or the day after, Adam Sandler came on Dan Patrick and said, yes, absolutely, I'll do that. Now, the chances of Derrick Henry getting 2,000 yards again are almost infinitesimal. If you look at the drop-off of 2,000-yard seasons, you don't even get to 1,500 the next year. I think we talked about that last week.
Well, look, I'm just going to call my shot right now. I've never seen Derrick Henry in front of a camera acting, although he has a couple of commercials, right?
Oh, he was pretty good in the State Farm commercial, I think. Yeah.
He'll be nowhere near Anthony Edwards, the Minnesota T-Wolves star. He played sort of the villain, trash-talking.
Oh, yeah, he was really good in that movie.
What was that movie called?
Hustle.
That was a good movie.
He was excellent in that movie, I thought. He was really good.
Actually, the dude who played the main character, who's also an NBA player, I thought was way better than I thought he was going to be, too.
Yeah.
But Anthony Edwards was perfect in that movie.
And you know what? I'm going to save the best for last because I've been here and seen this, and every great business fills a need. And there's most definitely a need.
Are you talking about
Mina
Kimes? Yes.
Very shrewd here.
Yes.
She is starting a Scared Straight style program where pro athletes are going to visit high schools across America and make parents, not the kids, make the parents realize that their kids have no chance at earning a living in sports.
To be fair, she just threw this out on social media, but as somebody who's been through it like you, Paul.
It's needed.
Oh my God, is it needed?
I can't tell you how many Little League games, softball games, I've sat there in the bleachers, polyparental unit, and all these parents are getting worked up because their kid doesn't resemble a Major League All-Star. And I'm like, hey, guys, look at me. And I just talked to the dads. Look at me right now. 3 hours ago, I was in an NFL locker room, and I can just tell you there are no pro athletes on this field. Just enjoy the game and enjoy your kid's athletic career as long as it lasts.
You want to know where I felt like I've done some of the best parenting I've ever done was as my kids are getting older, and I kept it very real. And I didn't even have to do about being pros. I mean, my kids struggled to get much playing time in high school. But my favorite part was my youngest son, who actually made played basketball 4 years at Corona. Didn't play much, but he made the teams, in part because he was a good team guy and understood, like, okay, I'm going to be at the end of the bench. I got to do my role and not whining about playing time. And he became a coach. And I forget why it came up, but we were sitting there kind of talking about players, and he was coaching last year or whatever. And somehow it came up about him possibly ever making the Corona rosters when my older son was playing. My older son did not make varsity. The Corona's teams were stronger when my older son was playing. And and my youngest, I said, you're probably going to sit there and say you would have made the teams that Alec didn't. And my youngest son looked at me and goes, made the teams when Alec was playing? He goes, I shouldn't have even made the teams when I was playing. And I'm like, okay.
It's good.
I made sure that he understood the whole time.
Dose of reality on that one. All right. I'll ad-lib another winning behavior. Walter Nolen III, according to Jonathan Gannon, was employing what the nutritionist told him, and he was sort of eyeballing whether he had a handful worth of broccoli on his plate. Fistful. Okay. So,
although I'm going to say I'm not ultra familiar with all that stuff, but I believe that when they talk about fistful of food, it's usually the protein. It's not the vegetable. Usually,
I believe that's wrong. I believe protein is usually like the palm of your hand, and then the fist is for vegetables.
So you just don't want to overeat.
Really? Even if you're 310, you can't, let it rip? You can't go in there and just pile it on,
Oh, 310 pounds.
310
I thought
pounds,
you meant like 3 foot 10 inches tall. And
yes.
I'm like, what?
Usually it
pounds.
is the palm of your hand is a serving of protein, and then the vegetables
that
is
the
winning
fist. Behavior. That's what you want to hear from a rookie.
So that was the second time I've heard broccoli brought up in 2 days. The other one was Ron Wolfley, who, to his credit, admitted he had recently put on some weight. And he had to lose some weight. And so, you know what his go-to? Everyone has their go-to on cheat day. But you know what Wolf's go-to is when he's dieting? Cottage cheese.
I like cottage cheese.
Right there, he lost me.
I've been on a cottage cheese kick. There's a ton of protein in that.
I love cottage cheese.
You need texture, though. You have to
and
put
everything seasoning.
Oh, so I like blueberries and maybe a little honey.
Good.
But you if you don't have something else, the texture.
If you want it
bad.
savory, put in the everything.
Here's where it gets worse, because it can always get worse. Wolf puts raw broccoli on his cottage cheese.
Ew, that is gross.
And then adds hot sauce.
Oh, that's really gross.
And at that
Wolf
point,
loves his hot sauce.
At that point, I skipped lunch because the thought of the cottage cheese with raw broccoli and hot sauce.
Maybe as long as I'm not the one who loses, when we keep track of all the other teams this year, whoever comes in last has to eat a bowl of Wolf's concoction.
Do you eat yogurt?
Actually, is Wolf related to this news anchor, Olivia? Maybe he had one of those weird, cravings that pregnant women have, because that's what cottage cheese with broccoli and hot sauce sounds like.
How he even thought of that combination the first time.
Well,
knowing Wolf, it's like, I know I have to eat the cottage cheese. I need to eat vegetables. I'm going to put it all together. And if I just cover it in hot sauce, it's going to taste like that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, when he hit 270 plus, and that wasn't that long ago. When he hit 270 plus, apparently he lost all that weight to get down to 230. He was Captain Broccoli, just grilled broccoli with basically a little something on it, olive oil or something.
When I lost all my weight, I had broccoli every day, and I had tomato soup most days.
Broccoli, that's the key.
Okay, so there you go. Your broccoli update desk.
Do you eat yogurt, Paul?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No,
Are you weird with textures? I can be weird about textures. You just don't like dairy?
Dairy?
Dairy,
you have a dairy issue.
Dairy doesn't like me, so let's just put it that way. We all like, and here's a segue, we all like Dennis Gardeck. So
yes.
Here's the segue, the Barbarian himself, Gardeck the Barbarian, one of the few Wolfley nicknames that actually players embraced. Gardeck the Barbarian, and not only a great dude, great player on special teams. One of the great all-time flashes as a position player, that 2020 season where he had 7 sacks and 7 TFLs and 94 snaps.
And nobody saw it live.
Yes, and that was ingrained in my brain, right? When he came in for Chandler Jones in an empty MetLife Stadium against the Jets, all that, and he had 2 sacks out of nowhere. Even Cliff Kingsbury was just like stupefied, like, wait, what just happened? Did Gardeck just go off? He was unbelievable in the community as well. His time as a Cardinal, you can count on one hand how many times there was a community event and Gardeck wasn't there.
This is true.
It was remarkable.
He was fantastic. You could argue that he might have, and as big of an impact that he had on the football team, you could argue that he had a greater impact on the community. He did that much of it.
He really cared. It wasn't just showing up because a lot of players were showing up. There were times he was maybe the only one doing some on his own. He really cared about the community here.
Okay, quick power poll of Cardinals linebackers that were brought in and tried to move inside and then eventually had to be moved outside because that's where they should have been the whole time.
Oh, no.
Hassan Reddick, Dennis Gardeck, Isaiah Simmons, Zevin Collins.
Isaiah?
Sorry.
Isaiah wasn't even. He still doesn't have a position.
No, that's
you
true.
can't even see his outside. He doesn't have a position.
He's on the Packers. He's coming to Phoenix.
He's a revenge game. Is that a... Yeah, okay.
Well,
big revenge game.
Yeah, on special teams, bring Gardeck back because Isaiah really
Gardeck will be here. He's coming with Jacksonville.
You do have to respect the hustle and the hard work for Gardeck, who was on special teams, took that very seriously. He loved special teams because to Gardeck, that was true football. That's true. About as physical as you could be on a football field, and he loved that. And to have worked his way up to a main piece of the defense at a time in Arizona, just impressive, the work ethic, and just a good dude.
I just realized we're going to see all 4 of those guys this year.
What about Marco Wilson?
Zayvon Collins every week. We can get to him in a minute. We got Zayvon Collins here, and then Tampa and Hassan Reddick.
Yep.
And Jacksonville and Dennis Gardeck. And Green Bay and Isaiah Simmons.
Wow.
And the Cardinals are playing Bengals and Marco Wilson, and you of course saw what he did and then deleted on IG the other day, correct?
That he deleted.
Paul saw it.
That's why I gave you the look.
Paul saw it.
I didn't see it before it was deleted.
Yeah.
I've seen some tweets, but I don't think I saw something on Instagram.
Somebody put out a video of, and I'm not going to get too deep into it, but somebody put out a video of Max Melton not making a play last year or something, and somebody said, what did he do wrong or something? And Marco Wilson put like 6 answers on Instagram, and all of them very derogatorily.
I saw this on Twitter.
And then he deleted them, but all the Cardinals fans found them and screenshotted them and then went after them.
Is that why maybe Tuesday afternoon Max Melton just tweeted a question mark? And that was it? Are we doing some
Probably.
investigative journalism
Yep.
in real time here
Yep.
on Cardinals Underground?
Yep, there you go. Okay, well, guess what? That'll wrap up
Well,
our I-Team investigation.
Well,
or
and
what do you
also
have?
speaking of Jacksonville, there's a chance we see more than one two-way player this season. Max Melton's brother, Bo, who's been a wide receiver in Green Bay, was supposedly going through some cornerback drills. Maybe they're trying to find a replacement for Jair Alexander.
Interesting.
So could we see a two-way player in Bo Melton with the Packers?
I did not see that. That is interesting. Okay, all right. And Jair Alexander, how many hits have you had in the mailbag so far? How many people
Actually,
have submitted
none
about?
so
No,
far.
really?
No
Surprising.
surprised.
People haven't lost their mind about
Or maybe
adding
they've
Jair
realized
Alexander?
that that's not who Monty goes and signs. Is a guy that's played 8 games in 2 years.
Right. Right. Exactly. And don't forget, appointed himself team captain on the road in his hometown of Charlotte, and then went out there on his own volition for the coin toss, screwed it up, and then got suspended.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
That's one of the
I forgot about
all-timers.
that story.
Yeah, that's most definitely not winning behavior.
No.
Okay. All right, that'll do it. I think we've done our damage here on Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.